Welcome back, everyone, to Tales by the Fire. This week we have another installment. We will explore Chapter 3 of The Champion's Quiet. Please sit back and relax. If you enjoy the tale, please hit the like and the subscribe button. Your presence is welcome and appreciated. The Champion's Quiet, Chapter 3, Scene 1. The morning sun filtered through the window of the small cafe, spilling amber light across the table. A soft hum of conversation and the clink of cups surrounded them, but for the moment, it felt like the world had receded. Sandra sat cross-legged in the booth, dressed in blue jeans and a large hoodie, sipping a black coffee like it was sacred. Thurston watched her. She looked so ordinary like this, but he knew better. Half smiling, Thurston said, "You really like that stuff." "It's Earth's one true magic, liquid gold." "No coffee where you come from?" "No electricity, no cars, no coffee, but plenty of war, betrayal, and enchanted frogs." "Sounds like Florida. We have something called snakehead fish down there." Sandra let out a genuine laugh, short, unexpected. She looked down at her cup, still smiling. "So, how do you even pay for things like this in your hotel room? Credit cards? Fay Venmo?" "Gold," she said plainly. "I figured out in my early visits that your world worships gold, among other things, but you really like gold. I've got a decent supply. I just trade small amounts, quietly, never at the same place." "So you're a magical gold dealer?" "I prefer freelance economic alchemist." Thurston let out a laugh. "How long have you been coming here?" "Years. I lost count. It's easier to disappear here. Your world is noisy, crowded, fast, distracted." She looked out the window. Her smile faded. "I told myself I was gathering allies, making a plan. But really, I was hiding and procrastinating." Thurston didn't press. He just waited. "The king who took my throne has apparently died, and I didn't even know. That's why Traden came. He saw a power void and tried to fill it. He followed me here. I think he has been following me from realm to realm, and finally caught up with me here using the staff. I didn't think anyone else could do that."
"And now?" Thurston asked.
"Now? I don't know. I need to go home, gather my people, and rebuild my kingdom. I need to understand the state of my realm. I need to try to regain my throne."
"You know, I was thinking maybe I could come along. Maybe I could help."
"So, I would return with an ally."
She smiled.
"I do not know if you can actually return with me. The staff is yours regardless of what happens, but I do not know how it works. I just know that it feels very powerful."
They sat in silence for a moment, letting everything settle in.
"There's a place where the veil is thin, and where I often cross is near the mountain off of a hiking trail."
Sandra stood up. "Well, shall we go?" Thurston asked.
"I've got coffee in me. I feel brave. But following me could be very dangerous. My world will be in turmoil, Thurston. There will likely be war and a lot of violence in attempting to retake my throne. I cannot guarantee your safety. I cannot promise that you will not die. I could die."
Thurston shrugged his shoulders. "I think I died a long time ago. A fresh death for a worthy cause might be welcome, as long as it doesn't hurt. Something quick and painless is always preferred."
Sandra laughed.
Thurston stood, slipped into his tan jacket,
and followed her out the door. Scene 2. They hailed an Uber. Thurston insisted on using the word hailed. It sounded medieval to him, despite the fact that it required his phone and an app. During the drive toward the mountain, they both sat quietly. It was a comfortable silence as each, in their own way, pondered their next move. The Uber dropped them off at a trailhead turnout. Thurston ensured the driver was paid and that he received a good review for the ride to a rather obscure place. The two adventurers then followed a hiking trail toward the mountain. It was several miles before Sandra veered off the path. They worked their way through untamed forest until they came upon what looked like a stone arch structure that seemed to groan with age. The structure was mostly obscured by tree branches and ivy that seemed hell-bent on claiming it. This place was built on something old. The earth remembers, and it was built when there was a belief in magic. I can see an opening to my realm here. Traiden's staff is your key to unlock passage from Earth to other realms, if it responds to you. I cannot tell you how to use it, as I do not know how it works. Thurston held up his staff. It's humming, he said. Sandra nodded. It's waiting. Thurston, you might follow me through the veil, or you may be blocked from passing. Either way, I am so happy to have met you, so happy to have spent time with you, and so happy to have been intimate with you. You will always have my love. I must, however, put my feelings for you aside and return to my home now. I understand, Thurston said. She turned to the arch, whispered something in a language Thurston didn't know. A foggy window seemed to appear, and through it Thurston could make out a forest on the other side that did not match the one they were standing in. Sandra stepped through. Thurston could see her, just barely, on the other side. She turned and looked back, face lit with hope and anxiety. He stepped forward and hit a solid wall. Vaelira, he yelled. She placed her hand on the other side. So did he. Her lips moved, but her voice was muffled, her features starting to blur. Remember, I love you. And then the veil faded, closing between them. Thurston stumbled forward through the arch, but was still in his own world. Scene 3. Thurston stood there staring at the arch. He stepped back and struck it with the staff. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. He shouted, pounded, whispered her name, raised the staff, tried words he'd heard her say. The veil stayed shut. Eventually he sank to the ground, exhausted. He clutched the staff loosely in one hand and stared at the place where she had disappeared. He let himself feel it. Not just the anger, but the loss. The strange, beautiful woman who had walked into his life like a wildfire and then vanished. It was growing late. He was not prepared to survive in the middle of the woods overnight. He was now frustrated and growing alarmed. He needed to focus. He calmed himself and recalled his few therapy sessions after his wife had died. He started his prescribed breathing exercises. He inhaled slowly through his nose and exhaled slowly through his mouth. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. He imagined Sandra. No, he imagined Vaelira. He thought of her voice, her defiance, her laugh at the cafe. The staff pulsed. He stood, but the staff did nothing more. He was an engineer. He could solve this problem. Thinking of Vaelira caused the staff to do something, but it obviously was not the answer. Traiden chased Vaelira from realm to realm, or at least it seemed that way. I think it needs a destination and a person, Thurston thought. So he focused on the forest he had seen on the other side of the veil. Then he pictured Vaelira in that forest. The staff pulsed and shimmered. Now what, he thought. Hold the damn thing next to the arch, he told himself. So he did. A new foggy window appeared. No sound, just a shimmer, and on the other side, a forest different than his. He didn't hesitate. He stepped forward and crossed. He emerged into a glade of towering moss-covered trees glowing faintly blue. The air buzzed and the flowers pulsed. The blue sky above him shimmered with streaks of lavender. Vaelira was nowhere to be seen. He turned a slow circle, alone. Well, now what? He called her name several times. Vaelira! Vaelira! He picked a direction and started walking. As he walked, he did some analysis. It seems he could not enter another realm from a passage created by someone else. He had to make his own point of entry with his staff. Thurston found a naturally worn path and decided to follow it. Surely it would lead to Vaelira or civilization of some sort. He walked for several hours, encountering no one. He observed that despite a few color anomalies, this world seemed very similar to his own. Scene 4. The path he followed led him deep into the trees. The light from the sun was mostly obscured behind the dense forest canopy. Then, a voice. A voice was guttural and spoke a language Thurston could not understand. A tall, gaunt creature emerged from the brush. Bark-skinned, amber-eyed, half-human, a blade on its back, ancient anger in its voice. "I'm not looking for a fight," Thurston said. The creature responded with more speech, but again Thurston could not understand it, but it was clear it was not friendly. "I'm looking for someone," Thurston said. The creature drew its blade and stood in a battle stance that told Thurston this thing knew a thing or two about killing. It lunged, the blade first down, then around and over its head, then coming straight down towards Thurston's head. Thurston saw none of it clearly, and was prepared for his quick, painless death. Then his staff expanded into the two-headed spear he remembered, and he almost instinctively blocked the blow, barely and with great effort. The impact rattled his arms. He swung at the creature with his spear, but it was ridiculously wide and he missed. While staggering through this wild swing, he received a kick in the gut. That took all of the wind out of him, and down he went to his knees. Gasping, he calculated and went further down to the ground and rolled his entire body while swinging blindly. Crack! The spear made a lucky contact. The creature hissed and stepped back. Thurston staggered to his feet and took his best battle stance, which elicited another comment from the creature that Thurston took as sarcasm or perhaps mockery. The creature came at him again with a flurry of swinging blade moves that Thurston found impossible to follow. Once again, it seems instinct and the spear somehow came together to block the creature's sword. Thurston was better grounded for this impact, and all of him held firm. Not taking too much time to admire his own achievement, he quickly stepped back and did a little thing he would later name the Babe Ruth. Thurston stepped back, then, with his left leg, he stepped in toward the creature, swinging his spear like a baseball bat. It was a home run swing. Thurston had no aim or thought where the spear would connect, but the creature caught the blow across the throat. It gagged, coughed, staggered, and stumbled backwards. After a short pause, the creature disappeared into the forest. "I'm just trying to find her," Thurston panted. The creature vanished into the shadows. He stood alone again, painfully aware of how lucky he had just been. Scene 5. Thurston continued walking. Eventually the forest opened up. Thurston stumbled upon a village. Wood and stone structures, mossy rooftops, smoke curling from chimneys. Strange but peaceful. He walked slowly. He knew he had to be cautious. The villagers saw him. Some whispered, some pointed, children stared, but no one screamed, no one ran, no weapons were drawn, and no attacks. Just curiosity. This was a win in Thurston's mind. A woman on a porch nodded as he passed. A child smiled. He reached the center of the village, a small market square. An elder person approached him, speaking words he didn't know, but they were delivered with calm rhythm and gentle hand. Thurston bowed, hand to chest. This was the best way he felt he could convey, "I come in peace." It must have worked. The woman smiled and bowed her head slightly. He continued on and wandered around the village freely. He observed the people, and eventually he sat down near a shaded well. He rested his spear against his leg. With his staff between his legs, Thurston rested his head against it while holding it with his hands. Think, Thurston. You must think. How will you find Vaelira? In the middle of his thinking episode, a woman approached him. She held in her hand a wrapped package of some sort. She extended the package towards Thurston and said something he could not understand. This was so frustrating, he thought. How could he ask about Vaelira if he could not speak the language? The woman smiled, gestured to the package, and rubbed her belly. Then she made a sign with her fingers, pinching something and putting it to her mouth. Thurston vaguely thought that he understood. He took the package and unwrapped it, and inside was a sandwich. A delicious-looking sandwich. He had no idea how hungry he was until he saw the food in front of him. He bowed his head in appreciation and said, "Thank you," even though he knew she did not understand. She smiled and left him to eat his meal. The bread, meat, and cheese were delicious. Scene 6. Thurston sat near the well, chewing slowly. The sandwich was gone, but he could still taste the last bite. Something smoky, something sweet. It was one of the best meals he could remember, and he hadn't even known how hungry he was until it was in his hands. The woman who had given it to him returned, her hands empty now. She smiled again, then gestured with a subtle wave for him to follow. He stood. She led him through a narrow alley between two buildings and into a quieter part of the village. The people here were fewer, older. Some watched from doorways, and no one spoke. They stopped at a broad structure, larger than the others, with a pitched roof and a row of small windows under the eaves. It was an inn. She didn't open the door, though. Instead, she turned and pointed toward the side yard. There, a heavy wooden chopping block, an axe leaned beside it, and several rounds of unsplit logs stacked nearby. A second, smaller pile of neatly split firewood rested under a sloped awning, protected from the elements. She gestured between the axe, the rounds, and the split wood, then looked at him expectantly. Thurston didn't need words. He nodded. She gave a satisfied smile and stepped back with a little bow, leaving him to it. He peeled off his jacket and picked up the axe. It was heavier than he expected, iron or something close to it. He tested the weight, adjusted his grip. He had done this before, not recently, but his body remembered. The first swing hit dead center, the log splitting cleanly with a satisfying crack. A few children nearby clapped. A man walking past grunted approvingly. Thurston allowed himself a rare smile. Later, he stacked the last few pieces as the sun began to dip behind the trees. His shirt clung to his back, His arms ached, not in pain, but in that solid, earned way that made him feel human again. He wiped his hands on his pants, grabbed the staff, and stepped toward the inn's front door. Inside, the air was warm and smoky. A long counter, a low fire, a few villagers eating quietly. Wooden beams above, herbs drying in bunches. The woman, the sandwich giver, stood behind the counter, wiping bowls and humming softly. She looked up and smiled when she saw him, nodding in approval. Then her smile vanished. A large man, larger than any Thurston had seen in this realm so far, stood at the far end of the counter. He wore a fur-trimmed cloak and a scowl, and he slammed a metal cup onto the bar hard enough to spill its contents. He barked something in the local tongue, guttural, sharp. His hand shot out, grabbing the woman's wrist. She flinched. Thurston didn't even think. He crossed the room in 3 strides, stepping between them. Thurston said firmly, "Let go." The man glared at him. Didn't understand the words, but tone needs no translation. He released the woman's wrist, then shoved Thurston hard, sending him stumbling back into a stool that clattered to the floor. Once again, Thurston found himself on the floor on his butt. The villagers froze. The man grinned. Thurston stood slowly. Every instinct told him to walk away, but something deeper, maybe Traden's lingering essence, maybe just raw anger, rose in him like a fire. He grabbed his staff off of his back. The man laughed. The brawler lunged. The man's massive arms swept and collided with Thurston's head. It was like he had been hit with a 10-pound sandbag. Thurston's jaw rattled, and he fell across the bar. Instinct took over, and Thurston lunged himself up off the bar, ducked low, and swung the body of his spear to smack the man's ribs. That just seemed to fuel fire and rage inside his larger opponent. The brute charged again, this time slamming into Thurston's chest, driving him back into the wall. The air left Thurston's lungs. As Thurston was collapsing, he saw a stool and grabbed it. He swung it upward like a shield, catching the man on the chin. The man reeled back, dazed. Thurston didn't wait. He stepped forward and did a backward Babe Ruth on the man's stomach, then spun back the other way and swept the brute's legs out from underneath him. A crash. The man hit the floor. His head looked like it bounced once, maybe twice. And then he didn't get up. Silence. The woman stepped forward. She looked at Thurston, eyes wide, not with fear, but with something like gratitude. She touched her wrist gently, then bowed her head. The fallen man groaned. He did not seem to have any fight left in him, and he crawled toward the door holding his gut. Thurston stood there, chest heaving, still gripping the spear. The woman beckoned him to follow her upstairs. At the end of the hall was a small room. It had a bed and a wash basin, and her message was clear. Rest, food, a place to stay. He nodded, and as he stepped into the room, the staff still warm in his grip, he heard the door close softly behind him.